Hey everybody, it's Ardith. Thanks for dropping by. Today I'm going to be using some old and new Essentials by Ellen items to create a really fun rainbow card. I'm starting with the new swirl background stamp, and I'm putting it into my mini MISTI, just trying to make sure that the center is in the center. Since I want my stamping to go from edge to edge, I'm using some temporary adhesive to attach my white cardstock in place, and I'm going to try and make sure that I remember. Oops, that's exactly why I'm going to try and remember exactly where I placed it, so that I can stamp it more than once if I need to. I'm going to do some partial stamping with this, and to make sure that I get it right, I'm going to use some masking paper to mask off the parts of the stamp that I don't want inked. I cut the masking paper at angles so that I can make sure that the center points of my two swirls will still be exposed. Now I'm using my Catherine Pooler mini inks since they're nice and small and they'll give me nice stripes of color. And also because I recently re-inked them so they're nice and juicy. I'm inking this stamp in rainbow order, but I am starting with yellow in the center. I'm just tapping each ink pad down to create a stripe of that color. At this point, I rethought my approach and decided that I don't want to have to stamp it twice, so I'm going to spritz it instead so that I'll get good coverage and some blending of those ink colors. That means I need to change my paper to watercolor cardstock so that it can absorb any of the water. I've just run my panel through my Gemini Junior with the constellation cover plate. This card shows that you don't need a night sky for a constellation. This die adds some stitch lines in a fun pattern that gives me just a little bit of interest on my white background. Now I'm going to trim the panel with some of the new essential rectangles. I want to create a kind of frame around a smaller panel, so I figured out which rectangles I wanted, and then I taped them to my watercolored panel before running them through my Gemini Junior. Now, unfortunately, I was impatient, and my panel was not completely dry, so when I pulled off the purple tape, I actually ripped the panel a little bit, but I'll just cover that up later on. Before I move on, I'm going to spritz the panel with some Avery Elle Clear Shimmer Spray. It not only gives a bit of shine and shimmer, but it also helps those colors blend together a bit more. Now I'm coloring some clouds, stars, and a unicorn from the Rainbows and Unicorns stamp set that was released last year. I'm leaving most of it white, just adding some shading to the clouds and the unicorn body, and adding a few little rainbow elements on the unicorn. I colored the stars yellow, and then on the mane and tail, I added in some orange and green so that it looks like my three colors have blended into a full rainbow. Now it's time to start assembling the card. I've got a 110-pound card base here that I've scored with my score pal, and I've folded it in half. I've already put some foam tape on the back of my watercolor panel, and now I'm just placing it onto the card base, trying to make sure that it's straight. You can see that little ripped portion in the bottom. For the inner panel, I need to make sure that I'm matching it up correctly, but because the stamping is quite symmetrical, it's not that difficult, and I don't think it would really make a big difference if I didn't get it back in the right place. Now I'm just going to place all my little colored items around and figure out exactly where I want to have them placed. And that bottom cloud is going to cover up that ripped portion of the panel. I want some of the items inside the frame and some of them outside, just to get good coverage. And now to add a bit more sparkle, I'm just going over the edges of the clouds with some Stardust Stickles. To finish the card, I stamped a sentiment from the new Modern Succulent stamp set in VersaFine Onyx ink using my MISTI. I hope you've enjoyed this video. The constellation cover plate adds a fun stitch detail to the background, and partial stamping is a really fun way to get more out of this background stamp. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.